What blocks keep you from your fullest creative expression? What blocks are keeping you from your fullest creative expression? That is going to be our exploration today. So if the first thing you're like, I don't know, we're going to go through it. So get ready. And maybe you already know some of them, right? But for many of us, there are blocks, and they get in the way of allowing us to fully step into every aspect of our creative expression that's calling us forward. We're going to be doing this in our art journal today. Blank page before you, and working through those blocks today. I am your host for Creative Spirit Gathering, Jen Hutchins, founder of Unity Arts Ministry. Unity Arts Ministry's mission is to inspire transformation through creative expression and spiritual enrichment. If you'd like to support the mission of this ministry and programs like this, you can give online on our website at unityartsministry.org. We thank you in advance for the many ways that you help support our programming. Blocks. Now, if you are a living, breathing human being, you have probably encountered this idea of blocks at some point in your life, whether related to creativity or to other areas of your life. You know, it's like, oh, I would do that if only, right? And there's like this thing that like stops you from stepping further into taking action on whatever that is, right? But in our creativity, what often happens is we get these blocks that tell us, I can't do it before we even try something. And so we end up keeping ourselves from doing something based on some illogical like reasoning within our own minds. And what happens is that these tend to perpetuate themselves, and they tend to build upon each other, creating these brick walls until we're like, oh, well, I'm just not creative at all, right? There's like all these blocks keeping me from doing this. Recently, in my life, I busted through one of these little brick walls that I had, and that was this false belief that I had been holding for over 20 years that I could not paint with watercolors. Right? I would say, I can do acrylics, I can do oils, I can't paint with watercolors. I told myself that. I told everybody else that. I probably told some of you that are watching this right now, I cannot paint with watercolors. And I had these like reasons in my own head of why I couldn't do that. And so about 30 days ago, I said, well, I'm going to challenge that belief. I'm going to challenge it for myself. I'm going to sort of just break that down and allow myself to explore watercolors. And not just I'm going to allow myself to explore watercolors, but I'm going to commit to a full month of painting every day with watercolors. And I did this, and I've noticed myself growing with it. And what I've learned is I can paint with watercolors. So yay, pat on my back. But it took me like 20 plus years to get to this point of being like, wait a minute, like, why can't I do that? What is this really a truth? Or is this a false belief that I've been holding about myself? And so today I'm inviting you to look at these false beliefs that maybe you've been holding about your own creativity. Where are you limiting yourselves? You know, in some cases we say, oh, sure, I can create things, but I could never make a living as an artist, right? Artists aren't financially prosperous, right? So maybe I'm allowing myself to make things, but I'm not allowing myself to share them, because what would that come to anyways? Maybe we have blocks around, again, particular medium or particular way of expressing ourselves. Some of us who are visual artists may shy away from singing or dancing or trying something new in the kitchen and experimenting. And we block ourselves into these limited ways of expressing our creativity. And then there's those of us who are just like, I'm going to do it all. But maybe we are so far-fetched that we don't narrow it down to the point of what am I going to do to share my art out into the world, to make a difference with my art, to use my art and my voice to share a message. You know, maybe we've got this block about, you know, I can do the creativity, but nobody wants to hear what I have to say, right? So we all have these different ways that we're creating these blocks in our lives. And we've been working into the book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And right in week 1, she talks about this idea of core negative beliefs. And essentially, they're things like this. If I make art, I will have to be alone. If I make art, I will feel angry. If I make art, I will feel bad because I don't deserve to be successful. I will only have one good piece of work in me. It's too late. If I haven't become a fully functioning artist yet, I never will. And she goes on to list many of these types of core negative beliefs. I call them creative blocks. Thoughts, ideas that we've picked up somewhere along the way that are keeping us from leaning into the idea of this infinite possibilities of creativity that lie before us. And she says the way to overcome these core negative beliefs is to transform them. So first of all, to recognize what they are, recognize them and call them out. Because if we just keep stuffing them, you know, in the back closet somewhere and we don't ever air them out, they're going to continue to be with us. We're going to like take them from one house to another, and we're always carrying these core negatives with us or these blocks with us. So when we take the time, right, to like unpack, go through each one, what does that feel like? Where is that holding me back? Acknowledge it. Then we can transform it, right? It's a spiritual principle too, right? The way out is the way through, to look at it, to acknowledge it, and then move through it. So she says you can transform these ideas into positive alternatives. She calls them affirmative weapons. So changing something like, well, for example, the phrase that was in my own head, I can't paint with watercolors. I have the freedom to express myself in any medium I choose. Or maybe it was that I had this fear of, I had to do watercolors perfectly. So maybe it's, I don't have to paint perfectly. And that is the freedom, right? I give myself the freedom to make a mess. I give myself the freedom to express myself without worrying about the end product. So we can allow these spaces for affirmations to come in. Divine creativity expresses its will through me, right? Taking away that idea that it has to be me doing my own perfection. This idea of I will have to be alone. Well, the fact that we've got a community of people right now in this Zoom room creating art together proves you don't have to be alone. So I can create in community. The idea, you know, I will only have one good piece of work in me. Maybe our affirmation there is infinite creative ideas lie within me. So we take these ideas that are possibly negative beliefs that we've been holding on to. We don't need to dig back, you know, and be like, where did that come from? You know, oh, identify it. It was my 3rd grade teacher who said this thing to me, and that's where this block formed. The fact that we acknowledge there is a block is powerful. So that's all we need to do today is recognize, you know, maybe there's a particular project you have coming up and you can look at what are the blocks specific to this project? What are the blocks specific to something that I was attempting to do in the past and didn't follow through on? Why have I been procrastinating? So we're going to look at what these blocks are and then allow for a positive affirmation to come forward as we're allowing these blocks to be acknowledged. So the hope for today is going to be to write down these blocks, to capture them on the page in your art journal. So I have some blocks on my page that my ideas or thoughts will be seen as crazy, that I don't have the right experience, that I have to be perfect. I don't have the proper training in a certain medium or modality. Who am I to ... right? Who am I to do this? The desire to be accepted and for my art to be approved, not enough time, right? So I've put these blocks on my page, and I wrote these with Silly Scents markers. These are water, they're washable Crayola markers. Yours don't have to have smells, but if they do, bonus. But the idea is that they are water-based markers. So I can take water to my blocks and watch them begin to dissolve. I'll hold that up. You can see them starting to dissolve, and they're soon going to drip all over my keyboard. So I'm going to angle that. But this is such a fun way that you can start, right? Whether it's with blocks or something else in your life that you want to transform, writing it with something that's water soluble and then hitting it with water, watch it dissolve, right? It can become a meditation in itself to sit and watch this begin to flow. If you have watercolor paints, you could take a paintbrush and start moving this even more, or set it aside, let this dry, and on a separate piece of paper, maybe begin to write out some affirmations that counteract some of these blocks that you've been holding on to. And then when the paper page is dry, you can add your collage page on top of that, or let it dry, get out some Sharpies or other magic markers and do design over the piece once it's dry. How you process this, right, is going to be up to you. You don't have water-based markers, find some other fun way to write things down and then make them dissolve, disappear, write them on paper and tear it up, right? It's about this idea of releasing these blocks that you've been holding on to and recognizing there's no truth in them. There's no permanence in them. They're just words, they're just ideas, and they can be transformed. So that's what we're leaning into today. Are you guys ready? You ready to bust through some of these blocks? And not only is this something that Julia Cameron talks about, this is really, it's a deep spiritual practice. It's the idea of denials and affirmations. We are denying that these things have any power, any truth in our lives, because the truth is you were born a divine creative being. That is the affirmation you could put on top of anything, right? Like stick it on your fridge, put on your bathroom mirror. I am a divine creative being. So that is the affirmation we release, and then we affirm the truth of who we are, the truth of our own creative power, and then allow ourselves to step into that. So we're going to take a moment to let this sink into our bodies, into our minds, into our hearts through silent meditation, and then we will be released to our creative practice to see what unfolds for you today. As you allow your body to become comfortable again, maybe relax your shoulders, roll them back and down, that little space between your shoulders and your ears. Adjust your hips, place your feet flat on the floor if that feels comfortable for you, and just breathe into this space. Allow yourself the presence of stillness, the opportunity to sink into the truth, and to allow yourself to let those authentic, perhaps vulnerable blocks begin to bubble up to the surface so they can be healed and released. Breathing in and breathing out. we move into a moment of silence. And the next breath, gently begin to bring yourself back to this moment as we affirm together, I am a divine expression of creativity in action. There are no blocks that can hold me back from expressing my truth. And so it is. And with that truth, I invite you now to move into your journal experience, processing your blocks and turning them into a positive affirmation on the page.